Welcome back to our part 5, really, of what we've been talking about this week, which is the thought-provoking question, are you as recovered as you need to be? Because remember, just because you're moving forward and you're doing things every day doesn't mean you're free to run and be your best. And that's what we want to get to the bottom of. And in the previous 4 episodes this week, we've been observing ourselves for the presence of 5 specific symptoms that really tell a story about where we're at, like where we're actually at in our recovery process after narcissistic abuse. Because what we've observed is that women will get to a certain point in healing and recovery, and they just kind of stop there. They're like, oh, well, it's better than it was before, so here we are, I'm just going to move forward. And what we're saying is that's not good enough. So we want you to look at these symptoms in your life, and we're going to talk about what's going on. And at the end of this episode, I want to share some more with you about where we're going to take these 5 episodes next week. But today, we're going to be talking about our 5th symptom, and that's what it looks like when we're distrusting God, maybe secretly on the inside of our heart. Doesn't mean that we're not going to church or we've turned our back on Him, but we're just not at that level of faith and trust, which means all the things that come along with it are missing. All right, so let's talk for a minute about what are the signs of this? Like, what are the things that show up when we're distrusting God? Like maybe not like flat out like, God, I hate you and that's it, I'm done, we're done. No, but maybe there's just like part of us that we're holding aside. What does that look like? Wendy, in your experience, what would you say?
Well, like you just said, it's not like you're completely decided this isn't for me, God isn't real, but there is a sense of, but I can't quite trust Him the way I thought I would. So I'll keep Him in my life, but at a distance. I'll go to church and I believe, and I'll say I believe, but a lot of those things in the Bible, maybe they're true, but they're just not true for me. And I'll read the Bible when I have some time, or I'll pray if I need something, or it's kind of a duty and an obligation. You're basically, yeah, you can be around, but you're in the outer edges of my life.
Right. And what you said about it being dutiful is that's a big one. Because it's not, I mean, let's be real. It's not every moment that we just feel like we're just, angels are singing as we go about our day all the time. I mean, that's not reality all the time either. But when it feels like duty, and sometimes we do it just out of Christian discipline.
Yes.
Maybe we're just going through a dry patch. That's normal too, because maybe it's something going on with us. Sometimes it's that God wants us to press into Him further. And, and then we discover Him, and then all of a sudden more things unlock, like a new level to our relationship, a new level of our faith unlocks. But if all the time it feels like we're going through the motions, when we find ourselves, when we think about reading His Word and we're like, oh, going to church, we're coming up with excuses to get out of it, or we're only doing it for the social aspect of other people who are there. It's not because I can't wait to worship. Those are the little things that we have to look for as to what's going on. Again, we all have a dry patch. We all sometimes feel exhausted, and that impacts things. But when we step back and look, like, over a period of time, when our gut starts to tell us, or we think about certain issues, or we start to feel cynical because someone's talking about faith, or how, the one person I can always trust in my life is God, and something in us is like, yeah, well, where was He when I needed Him? Where was He when this was going on and that was going on? So, what's up with that when we're noticing those things?
You just said something really important, because there's this sense that, and we've all done this, and we can talk about the theology of it later, but there's this sense of God is just the best version of a person, but He's all powerful and all knowing. And so if I were God, I wouldn't have let this narc get away with this. Or like we were talking about yesterday, I wouldn't let people throw garbage on other people's lawns, so to speak. I wouldn't let people get away with such horrific, mean, evil things, because if you're God and you're all powerful and you're good, well, then you should stop these types of things, right? And so part of that is blaming him for not stepping in, blaming him for what happened, or at least maybe you're not outright blaming him, but there's at least well, if God really loved me, why didn't he like just step in and just step in the middle of it and protect me? And
That's a very real feeling
oh, it's
when you've
completely
dealt with
real,
abuse.
completely real, completely normal, completely human, completely understandable, complete and so common. We can say these things, and I bet everybody's gone, well, okay, yeah, I've done that. I've done that. I'm sure you've done that. We've all done that. Like, why didn't God stop this thing? He could have stopped it, right? Like, why didn't he stop it? And there is a lot of theology and a lot of talk about who God is and how he's not just this, good person, that he's a little bit different from us. And holiness
And
is,
how he gave us free will and
and
how,
there's free
all
will,
that.
and holiness and justice are part of his character. We're like him, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's exactly like us, right? And so his ways are above our ways, and there's a lot of things we could get into, but just for our purposes, just for today, we're just talking about the impacts on us emotionally and psychologically of struggling with those very human concerns and beliefs.
Right.
So, for example, there's long-term impacts of things like resenting God or shutting God out and just saying, God gets to live in this little box that I pull out on Sunday mornings, but that's it, because he doesn't show up the way I want, or when I needed him to.
Like he's a Santa Claus in the sky or a genie in the bottle,
Yeah,
He didn't do what I expected.
or optional.
Yeah.
And when you treat God as optional or something that you only take out when you need something, or he's not quite trustworthy, you lose out on a lot. There's consequences. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like you're keeping yourself safe and he wasn't good to you anyway, right? But there's consequences to you in terms of your sense of peace, your security, hope, the strength, feeling like you have to be the one who has all the energy, all the will, all the power, because the only one that ever makes anything happen in your life is you. And as a finite human being, that only works for so long. You have to operate in your own wisdom and your own understanding and the things you know. And as human beings, we are very limited in the things we know, which is part of why we struggle with this type of thinking, because there might be all kinds of reasons. And again, it's not really what we're doing here, but might be all kinds of reasons why something truly horrific happened, or was allowed, in a sense, if you want to use that word, to happen. But it opens the door to being attacked in how you think about God and how you feel about God, and gives, like you mentioned just one of the other podcasts the other day about, Satan's a lion walking around. Who can he attack? Who can he destroy? Who can he? And that's like, oh, well, this person's ripe for the picking because they don't want much to do with God anyway. So where can I step in and lie? Where can I step in and camouflage? Where can I step in and say, you really don't need God? Did he tell you that? Oh, there's different ways. Right. And I have discovered that it's those whispers and those lullabies and those sing-songy things that get us into the most trouble.
Right.
Those little soft lies.
Right.
You sure? Really?
And the irony of all this too is when we start questioning, God, are you really going to be there for me? Why did you allow this to happen? I asked you, and I thought that I was doing what I thought I heard you say, and this bad thing happened, and this marriage wasn't anything like what I thought it would be. And so when we start having these doubts, first of all, of course, it opens the door because the enemy pounces on that. Those are the very thoughts he wants us to have. It's a trap. And he's going to attack in that and set up a stronghold in that area if we will let him. So at the very moment when our answers are only found in the Lord, what we're looking for, it's only found at a new level of relationship with him. That's when we turn and back off. So that's why it's a setup. It's a trap of the enemy to do this. So now what do we do?
Well, just like before, where people are going to say, why is this always the answer? This isn't always the answer to everything. This is simply the first step. And we're
Right.
talking about signs and symptoms to look for in your life so that you can take all the next steps. So just like Monday through Thursday, we're going to say it's time to observe yourself and take some notes. So when are those times where your heart and your mind and the way you're living have divorced themselves from anything having to do with God? When are you
Or
operating in your,
pieces even.
yes, yep. When are you operating in your own strength? When are you trusting on your own wisdom? When are you saying, well, God didn't show up for me and I'm the only person who does show up for me. So I'm going to make things happen, versus praying first for help or strength or wisdom or understanding, or instead it's like, nope, it's all on me. It's always all on me.
Yep. Why is it like in those moments when we're looking for him, sometimes the best thing we can do is to just go worship, you know, and instead we turn away from that and we think, I'm not going to worship. I'm mad at you, God.
And that's when you write that down. That's when you're feeling mad at God. That's one of the data points that we're going to ask you to write down and to look at is, well, God didn't protect me. God didn't stop it. And then don't just stop there. Then write what happens to you inside when you have that thought. How does that make you feel?
Yeah.
What does it make you do in the world in terms of this thinking, this type of thinking leads to this type of feeling, which leads to me acting this way, doing this thing. So where did it lead? You're going to maybe need a couple paragraphs for this observation versus just a quick sentence or two. But you're looking for all those times where you are upset, frustrated, or not feeling safe in God's presence, and ways to take care of it yourself.
Yes. Yeah. And we just want to emphasize again, what you're feeling is understandable.
Completely.
But what we don't realize in the heat of the moment is that our perspective is incomplete. We don't see the beginning from the end. Our perspective is skewed also. And we're making things worse for ourselves in so many ways. Because when you get down the line, you can look back. If you handle this properly, you can look back and say, oh, okay, now I see what was the good that came from that. Now I see how I grew through that maybe I wouldn't have if I didn't have this other experience as a catalyst for that. So there's
still doesn't mean
we don't have yet.
Well, but that still doesn't mean that thing was good either.
Right.
Like the thing could have been just out and out evil, human sin, makes no sense. You were doing the right thing in the right way at the right time, maybe even, and something bad still happens to you. If you're sitting at a stoplight and you're waiting for the light to turn green and somebody rear ends you, you were doing the right thing in the right way at the right time. You were supposed to sit there and wait, and something bad happened to you. We are not saying that the thing that happened wasn't bad, wasn't somebody else's fault, wasn't evil. We're not saying that. We're simply saying that rather than being angry at God, there are ways that you can have a relationship with God that go into that situation, and you can see where God can even take that thing, that horrible thing, and make something good happen out of it in spite of it.
Right.
In spite of it. And you partner with him for that work.
Yeah, he wants us to come and talk with him about this stuff. Certainly he can handle it. We are not hiding anything from him.
No.
And the bottom line when we don't is that we become lukewarm. And Scripture has something to say about that.
At best, we become lukewarm.
Lukewarm. Yeah. All right. So I hope this was helpful to you as we looked at these 5 symptoms. If you missed any of the episodes, please do go back and watch them all, because we are going to, for next week, we're going to circle back around to these 5 symptoms again, and we're going to unpack it a little bit deeper. So next week, we're going to be talking about the 5 assumptions that you need to question to get better. All right. So we want to encourage you to, keep pressing forward. We're here for you. We want to walk with you, provide some guidance, provide some wisdom. And as you've already figured out, we're going to challenge you a little bit in love to grow. So keep focusing on just becoming 1% better. You don't have to tackle everything all at once, just 1% improvement a little bit better than you were yesterday, a little bit better than you were last week, but just keep moving in that positive direction. Now, I know you might have some questions, some thoughts that you want to share. If you're listening to us on a podcast platform, you can just go into the show notes and click to text us, and we'll be glad to chat with you. Or you can email us at hello@AnnetteChesney.com. You'll find the link for that in this episode's description. But we do want to remind you to like this episode, to subscribe to our channel, and share this episode to help others. Don't forget to check that description for this episode for links, because we've got some other helpful resources that might really do you a world of good to take advantage of those. So keep going, keep taking the next right step, because we know that your best is yet to come. We'll see you on Monday.